I thought you told me we were getting Craig David.
No,
This is Craig Black.
No. Thank God we're not getting Craig David, because Craig David's talent has spanned about 30 years, and he's bloody awful. Craig Black's, on the other hand, is going to span much wider, because this is part of the sonic seasoning that me and you have done. Now, this is something that sort of scared us.
That clock scared me when it went there, because it's 10 minutes late.
I meant to turn that off, but the cuckoo clock appeared. Anyway, right, we're with Craig Black from Black Bottle. Now, we've been talking about the sonic seasoning and so on. Craig, welcome.
Thanks, guys.
Me and Justin have done this. Now, it sort of freaked us out. We didn't expect it to work just as well. So how did Black Bottle come up with this? How and when did you decide to do this?
So when we were launching the Alchemy Series, we really wanted to do something which was kind of a sort of tribute in the same kind of vein of the founders of Black Bottle, the Graham brothers. And so we really started to look into the story of how they themselves were almost kind of alchemists in the way they concocted their whiskey. They did it in a way that was very different of the time, and the Black Bottle was just one of the ways in which it stood apart. And so what we wanted to do was really kind of take their story and say, if they were alive today, what are the sort of things they would look at? What are the sort of things they would think about when crafting the whiskey? And so that came through in the two first expressions we released, Double Cask and Island Smoke. And then we wanted to take that a step further and say, well, if they were alive today, they probably wouldn't be doing a conventional whiskey tasting. They wouldn't be saying, here we have, flowers on the nose and chocolate on the palate and a lovely, warm, everlasting finish. Because that is the convention of today with whiskey, and the Graham brothers by themselves very much bucked convention. They embraced doing things differently, and to be honest, thank God, because it's the testament to Black Bottle that is still here today because of that mentality. So when it came to how we wanted to encourage people to try the Alchemy Series and taste it, their own at-home experiment that was really out there and bucked convention seemed very fitting. And so we looked at a couple of different avenues before settling on sound, because we felt sound is something that everyone can, almost everyone is got access to music and things like that, so that they can understand and appreciate the impacts of sound. And so that was kind of how we landed on
it. When you obviously scoured about and Googled it or whatever, and up, as if by magic, pops Professor Charles. Now, back in the day, he would have been an alchemist. Let's be honest. He'd have been doing. He kind of reminds me of a guy that at home would be trying to turn something into gold or whatever.
Water into wine.
Water into wine, or even better. No, you got together with him, and these two things, marrying them up, you have to obviously have your product. And then did you create the sound, or did the sound come first? And he said, look, this is kind of what I need to do to make this work better. Or how did that work? How did that process come about?
And so it's a great question. So the first stage is we have an incredible team at Distell. So our master distiller, Brendan McCarran, and our master blender, Julianne Fernandez, are both absolute sort of rock stars, and they very much fit the bill of what modern day whiskey alchemists are, in terms of their approach and everything they do. It started with the whiskies that they pulled together. We wanted to produce one which was kind of really for the smoke fans, So with Island Smoke, we really wanted to go with something that was much more in their face. For Double Cask, we wanted, because we can be experimental, was say, actually, let's pare the smoke right back. Had those two expressions, and then what we did was we worked with a creative agency called Hearts and Minds, and it was them who first proposed Charles Spence. And so they kind of made the intro, got us chatting with Charles, and what we then did was we worked with Charles and Brendan. So Charles did a bit of a white paper on
Okay.
how an experiment like this might work and what are the things we want to look for. And he sort of picked out certain things like, for example, chimes enhance, I think it's sweet sounds or things like that. Lighter kind of higher pitches, I believe, influence sweet sounds. But part of his white paper also talked about the fact that seaside sounds don't actually change the taste, they just enhance it. So when you're listening to the track for Island Smoke and you hear, I think it's like seagulls and the seaside, those aspects don't necessarily change what you taste, they enhance it. So it's almost like they multiply the effect you get.
Just bring out the qualities.
Is this why when you have fish and chips and ice cream at the seaside, it always is fantastic?
Exactly.
It could be.
It's why Isla whiskies taste better on Isla.
Yeah.
And so so what we did for the process was we worked with the spirit team to essentially instead of creating static tasting notes, which are just on the nose you'll get this, on the taste is this, the palate's this. We actually said to Brendan, okay, if you were tasting this over 90 seconds, give us the flavors in order. So you're nosing over those 30 seconds. So it's, instead of it just being about what is it you get on the nose, it's at this point on the nose, what do you get? What does that transform into? So essentially creating like dynamic tasting notes, then providing those to Charles and to the agency which actually created the track. And from there, then Charles worked to say, okay, well, if we want to try and alter flavor A into this direction, we want to use this sound. But then if we want to try and take it in a different direction, we want to give a different sound. And so it was very much that sort of starting with static notes, turning them into dynamic tasting notes, and then turning that into something dynamic, like a full piece of music.
Craig, I think you're going to go down the route of the Japanese with the TV you can lick to do the taste. Is that because I tried it and I was skeptical. I think I was skeptical, but I was absolutely flabbergasted.
Yeah.
I thought, has somebody broken in and is playing a prank on me? Because it literally does alter the whole flavor profile of the whiskies.
It does, unbelievable. I mean, I wholeheartedly concur. I mean, it done it in a way where sometimes it enhanced what was there, and sometimes it made it taste in a way that I wasn't overly keen on, and then it came back again, and it went through this whole gamut of different flavor profile, flavor and tastes, and it was fantastic. Me and him were
Did
both
you find the same thing yourself, Craig? Did you?
Yes, and I'll be honest, it was a bit of a scary moment because we kind of explored this avenue, and you have to make a bit of a commitment and put time and effort into actually exploring whether or not this will work. And so, whilst I'm very much a man of science and trusted Charles based on the white paper he pulled together and all the empirical evidence that he was able to provide that it would work, there's also that little voice in the back of your head that says, "What if this doesn't work?" So, it was very much from my side, it wasn't Amy, who is the global brand lead for Black Bottle, when we sat down and did it together, we purposely went to separate rooms so that we weren't influencing each other, because we knew going into trying it, what we're trying, that we're looking to see is there a difference, rather than maybe someone who's just approaching from a casual drinking side saying, I wonder if this is going to work. We were very kind of astutely kind of analysing it, and it blew us both away that it had such a difference. And it was quite funny because then we spoke to Brendan about it and we said, this is incredible, the effect it's had. And Brendan's kind of response was like, well, of course it does. That's why every tasting lab in the world is white. He's like, because he's like, as master distillers and blenders, we know this. And Charles, when we did the event, talked about how certain people will demand silence when they're tasting. Sommeliers will demand silence when they taste because of this reason. So it's very much something that, in the true spirit of Black Bottle, is almost a bit of a best kept secret in the sort of industry of you have this collection of people who are very involved with the spirit that know these things can make a difference. One of my favorite whiskies. If I go into my favorite bar, which is the Ben Nevis in Glasgow, has a full proper whiskey bar, full wall of whiskey. There's a whiskey I order when I go in there that I have on the shelf behind me, and it tastes different when I drink it with Nevis, and I know it's from the same batch. So these things do make a difference, and it was very interesting for us getting to kind of actually go through that process start to finish, because the last thing we are is charlatans with this. We are not trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. We're trying to be like, actually, this is quite a cool thing you can do. And if it doesn't work for you, then it doesn't work. It's the way these things are. But if we can get a couple of people excited about it, which it seems we've accomplished that with you guys, then that's quite exciting for us that we're able to be a bit different and be a bit less ordinary with how we're encouraging people to try whiskey.
Well, I be honest with you, I thought both of them, I thought they were very good whiskies in their own right, and we'll talk about that in a little minute. But whenever you'd done the video and played the music and sat and worked your way through it, it did change everything about it and enhanced it. In some ways, there was a few notes that appeared that I wasn't as keen on, and then it got better, and then it got enhanced. And it took you on this journey, which it surprised me and his lordship above me here.
To me, it was slightly surreal, Craig. I mean, everybody. I mean, I've Redbreast sitting there, and when you go and have it at the observatory at the top of the Grand Centre Hotel in Belfast, and somebody's bought it for you, you get it free. It always tastes better than it does whenever you're sitting at home for some reason.
For some reason, Justin always likes to get stuff for free. It always tastes better when it's free, especially if there's a sandwich with it.
Yes, unfortunately, that is true. I can be bought with food. I'm a bit like a seagull at the seaside.
But listen, anyway, honestly, we've talked about this. Go and get yourselves bottles from the Alchemy Series of Black Bottle and try this, because it is really, really interesting. You'll be surprised at just how big an effect it has on the tasting and the flavour profile of the two whiskies. Superb stuff. Thanks very much, Craig.
No, thanks. And just, it's funny you mentioned just how big an effect that has. So I don't know if you guys are aware of this, actually, what we did to launch these tracks, because obviously when you guys are accessing the tracks, track 1 is for double cask. Track 2 is also for double cask, but lets it pull in a different way. And then track 3 is for island smoke, which is more about enhancing the flavour. Although for me, without wanting to steer anyone in any direction, it totally changed the sweetness in it. It became a lot drier. It took away the sweetness. It was very different. But what we actually did was when we launched, and it was probably a bit unfair on the people we invited. We invited some members of kind of consumer lifestyle press, from Whiskey Trade Press, and then a bunch of whiskey influencers, excuse me, and people within the industry who are very well respected, to a mysterious tasting. And so what we did with that is we gave them all 4 bottles like this one here. So these were 4 sealed bottles, each numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we didn't tell them what was in the bottles. And the first whiskey went with the first track, the second whiskey went with the second track, the third whiskey we tasted in complete silence, and then the fourth whiskey we did to the final track. And then at the end, after we'd gone through everyone's tasting notes, we actually revealed that whiskies 1 and 2 were exactly the same, and whiskies 3 and 4 were exactly the same. And the reason we did that wasn't so much to pull the wool over people's eyes, but because we wanted to push the experiment further and say, actually, do people know? If you don't tell people they're part of this kind of mini experiment, we did call it the taste experiments. We were open to this experiment.
Okay, yeah.
People aren't aware that they're drinking different whiskies, and then you do it, because there's always that bias factor you've got to take into account. We tried to remove that, and we didn't tell people that they were drinking 4 different. We told them they were drinking specifically 4 different bottles. And then at the end, we did this big reveal that was 2. And to be fair, some of them with the really great palates, there was an IWSC judge in there. They were able to distinguish, actually, they'd had 2. We had Charlie McLean in the event. He distinguished that there was only 2.
That's some going. That is some going. I thought you were going to say he had the Israeli laser firing it into the bottle,
but we did have a lot of people who are quite taken aback by the fact that these weren't actually 4 different whiskies. It was just 2. and that the sound had pulled them in different directions.
Yeah.
Which, and it was, like I said, it wasn't necessarily trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes or fool anyone. It was just trying to push the boundaries of that experiment a little bit further. And that's kind of what we're trying to do with the Alchemy series as a whole, is push the boundaries of taste and try and inject a bit of energy and a bit of excitement into the way people drink their whiskey and try and break those conventions a little bit. And that was just another wee way with this we could try it. Obviously, we can't do that with everyone else in the world because you have to know what you're drinking to go and buy it. So
people have to go and buy it first.
But luckily, it works just as well.
Now, Black Bottle has been around for a long time. In some ways, you're the heirs to a legacy, if you like. It's been around since 1879, I think.
Right, yeah.
1879, it's been around since. And it was founded by tea blenders. So these guys, they started making tea, moved to whiskey. So tell us a bit more about the history of Black Bottle.
Certainly. So the history of Black Bottle is really genuinely fascinating. I mean, lots of, you hear so often, oh, this story is really unique, it's really different. But this one genuinely is. It's quite cool. So it starts in the small village of Torfans, which is way up in the northeast of Scotland. It was a wee crofter village, and there were three brothers born in that village. So there were more than 3 people in the village. I should point out, they weren't the only 3.
Probably not many more than 3 people in the village.
3 brothers born. So three brothers born into the Graham family. So those were Gordon, Charles, and David Graham, and they decided they wanted to make a bit of a name for themselves. They were aspirational people. They wanted careers, so they moved to Aberdeen, which was this bustling port town at the time, and really began to make a name for themselves. And the place where they hit their stride was actually importing and blending tea leaves. And that was really spearheaded by the oldest brother, Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
So after a while of doing that, I mean, and they were relatively successful doing so, they wanted to turn their attention to something a bit more exciting, a bit more kind of, for want of a better term, a bit darker, a bit more interesting. And so they turned their attention towards whiskey. Now, they started to pull together the best whiskies they could from the local area. So what's quite interesting about Black Bottle is when we talk about the sort of original recipe, people assume it's much more similar to the sort of Isla focused whiskey that people 20 years ago talk about. And actually the local whiskies that would have been first pulled in would have probably been more local to Aberdeen, so more probably Space Island based, but it was around this smoky tail that the whiskey had, this unconventional sort of marriage of sweetness with a little bit of smoke. And so the way they packaged the whiskey was in this sort of really kind of iconic black bottle. Now, back then it wasn't called Black Bottle, it was called Gordon Graham's Special Liqueur Whiskey. But the black bottle was so iconic that it just took on that moniker, and over time it became known as Gordon Graham's Black Bottle.
Yeah.
Now, if you skip forward to the First World War, the challenge was that the Graham brothers, were importing all their black glass from Germany, and during the First World War, that became somewhat troublesome. So,
nicht importing.
Yeah, and so began a period of quite a few decades, to be honest, where Black Bottle was actually sold in a green bottle, and that was my first interaction with the brand. So I was originally brought up in pub trade, and I remember Black Bottle being in this kind of really iconic green bottle, but the predecessors to Amy and I who worked on the brand kind of felt that actually it was time to bring Black Bottle back into its own black bottle.
Yeah.
And so the design, which you can up on this side, you can see just by me here, is actually much more aligned to sort of the original bottles that the sort of the Graham brothers would have sold all the way back in the sort of early 20th century, late 19th century. So it's a really cool story actually, and that is really why we did the Alchemy series, was we wanted to do something which really kind of captured the spirit of the Graham brothers, and I'm not a superstitious person, but a week into, it was literally like the same week we tried the liquid. We tried the spirit for the first time with the blend, with the spirits team to talk about it, and it was a complete kind of home run. We didn't really tamper with it. The first batch that Julianne and the team presented us was the one we went with.
Yeah.
And it's what you get there. But the very week we tried it, I actually got a call from Gordon Graham, who is the descendant of the founder, Gordon Graham. And I couldn't believe he's also called Gordon Graham. Just that very same week, he happened to call and find my number somewhere for a chat about the brand. So
wow.
It was obviously meant to be.
Sort of fated. It's fun. It's funny. Justin and I know a David Graham. Did you mention David Graham was being one of them? David Graham, if he had been one of the brothers, there never would have been a brand, because he would have drunk all of the whiskey that ever come in the shop. I call him the exorcist, because he used to come to my house and make all my spirits disappear. Yeah. Now you've got your standalone black bottle, your standalone blend. You then decide to do the Alchemy Series. Now the two of the Alchemy Series is the double matured, which is matured in level 4 char virgin oak, and then finished in sherry casks. It's finished in.
So yeah, I'll actually turn around. It's because the camera's now. I keep missing it. So we have two versions. So this one here is the double cask, and then the teal coloured one is what we call Island Smoke. So I think you can see them. You can see them up there behind me. So with these whiskies, what makes them a little bit different is with double cask is we have 12-year-old grain whiskey, which is then married with red wine malts finished in sherry casks. So really interesting balance of that fully 12-year-old red wine matured meeting those sherry finished malts. So really, really interesting balance. It's got a lovely sweetness, obviously. It's got that little hint of that sort of salt, tiny smoky tail hidden in there. But very nice. You get lots of those sort of red wine tannins, I find, with it as well, which is lovely. Island Smoke, excuse me, is much more kind of true to the recipe that I think people kind of know and love with Black Bottle.
Yeah.
So with our core expression and with our 10-year-old expression, both of those actually use very similar recipes. The only difference is the length of maturation. So the 10-year-old uses almost exactly the same build-up of malts, and with some grain whiskey in there, it's just the length of maturation. But our recipe is very, very Islay focused. So Brendan McCarran, our master distiller, tells us this story. He used to work on a single malt distillery over in Islay. I won't say which one, but if you're familiar with Brendan, you could probably guess. And he said actually all the distillery managers and distillers from all the various Islay distilleries used to get together and play football. And Black Bottle was what they all called the great equalizer, because there was a little bit of them all inside the bottle. The way he common refers to Black Bottle is the greatest hits of Islay. So there really is something in there, and if we were able to actually publish the recipe list of what was in there, it would probably blow some people away. So yes, fantastic Islay malts in there, which really do give us that smoky tail. The virgin oak you're referring to, Martin. So we do a double virgin oak maturation process on Black Bottle on the original variant. So what we do is we do a char up to about, I think it's 193 degrees centigrade, to really crack the barrels, bring out those lovely sort of caramelly type flavors they release. We then do once we've then done the marriage and done the blending of the recipe, then we actually put them all back into virgin oak for about another 6 to 9 months. And that's what we talk about, that double maturation of virgin oak. And so virgin oak is something we're very, we're kind of, is one of the kind of things which really helps pull Black Bottle apart, really gives it that sort of unconventional sort of taste that it's known for. And so it's quite characteristic, we would say, to the brand and to the product we produce. is that double maturation in virgin oak.
Now, the Island Smoke is it's the one thing I will say about Black Bottle, for the quality that you get in the bottle for the price point is surprisingly good. In terms of the Alchemy series, they retail for £25 a bottle, something like that.
£26, yeah.
£26 a bottle, and the quality you're getting in it is fantastic. Now, they are non-chill filtered, 46.3%.
Yep.
There's a lot to love about Black Bottle, especially the Alchemy series. I really do. I take my hat off to you.
Thank you. And double cask is natural colour as well. Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting one. So when we tried the samples for the first time, the samples were provided to us, I think at around 46% or something, just to try.
Yeah.
And we loved them. We absolutely loved them. And it felt like for whiskey of that quality, it would almost be doing a disservice to bring it down to 40% and chill filter it. So we again, with the Alchemy series, every kind of step in bringing this together, what we wanted to do was like I said, pay it like homage to the founding Grain brothers. And we felt, again, in their true spirit of being non-conformist, that actually producing a blended Scotch whisky at 46.3% that is non-chill filtered and one of them's natural colour felt like that. What we see, and I'm very much in this category myself as a consumer. Even though I hate the word consumer, because it makes it sound like we're all just kind of mindlessly wandering about being told what to do. But as a whiskey drinker and someone who loves whiskey, I find myself being less stringent by category. So we're seeing it across the board as well within Black Bottle and across whiskey drinkers, is that we're seeing these blurring of the edges, whereas some people would be like, no, unless it is single cask, single malt, I'm not touching it.
Yeah.
And actually that's changing because people are becoming more experimental. They're seeking out new experiences. They're trying new things. On a personal level, I think large thanks to that is down to New World whiskies, which are coming along and helping challenge our perceptions a little bit, and not just in terms of the products they're producing, but how they're marketing those products as well, which is
it's very much similar to what happened to wine a few decades ago.
I'm a sucker for orange in it, or peach in it, or coffee in it, or anything like that. There. What's next? What's next for Black Bottle then? How are you going to top this sort of sound sensation? How do you top what you've already done then? Because you're bound to have something sitting out of shot there that we can't see that we need to see.
Well, I think the one sitting out of shot is actually Black Bottle 10-year-old. So I might need to bring that one in.
All right.
I'll give this one some love. I'll give this one some airtime. So it's not been visible. I'll stick it up there, but it's a bit more obvious.
More visible.
So the Alchemy series is a sort of single batch produced annual release that we're going to be doing. So obviously, if we did one in 2021, you can understand what might happen later this year. And the response we've had to it being bottled at 46.3%, being non-chill filtered, that's something we are absolutely going to look to retain is within that. Again, because we can see that not just the reviews we get on Amazon, but when we go to whiskey shows and things like that. It's really exciting, again, just from my own personal side as a whiskey drinker, that we're taking a blended Scotch whiskey and, people who are going around trying all these single malts are then leaving with our product. And that's a testament to the product they've produced. So I would say keep watching this space with the Alchemy series. Obviously, we're only 1 month into the year, so I can tell you, don't start holding your breath.
Yeah,
it's like we've got a long year ahead of us.
Stop up now. Keep it. You're ready to go yet.
But yeah, if it's an annual release and we released 2 last year, then you can guess we might be doing something similar this year.
Yeah, but I honestly think what you've done with the sonic seasoning and Professor Charles with the standalone bottle itself is quality. I mean, there's no two ways about it. And now to bring out these two new expressions with the different flavour profiles at the percentage that they're at and at the price point and keeping it there, you'd be heartily congratulated. Honestly, you're doing great things. You're doing very, very good things.
Oh, thank you. And like I said, Martin, sorry, I was just to say, like I said, it's testament to the Spirit team and the job they do. I mean, we just, we do the storytelling and the deciding what color to paint the pack and things like that. But they're the team that produced the product, and we scooped both expressions scooped Master Awards at the 2021 Scotch Whisky Masters. Mm-hmm. So I think that really is testament to self, that they were the only blended Scotch whiskies to get those awards. And like I said, it's a real testament to Brendan, Julianne, that whole team and everything they do. It's it makes my job a lot more enjoyable.
I mean, it is fantastic value for money. I would urge people to go and buy it because it's and get under the experiment. Justin will be putting the links up all the way through the show so everybody can go and have a look at this. But do get it because it is a bit of a freaky thing, It blew Justin's wee mind. Doesn't take a huge. A plate of good sandwiches it blows Justin's good mind. But no, I was blown away by it. I thought it was superb.
Great, glad to hear.
Great, so thank you very much. Oh, quick one before we go. Do you ever hear of nominative determinism? I.e., your name. You didn't change your name for marketing promotion.
No.
Yeah, it's a real thing because I know somebody worked at the Grant office was called Miss Grant, and then is it the guy from the waterworks is Mr. Fishpool or something like that? Right? But there you go. So, Craig Black, Global Band Manager at Distell. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks very much, Craig. Thank you.
Review. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.